name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to Cattle Chris Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.cattlecris.com. And our special guest today is Dan from the Graveyard Shift. Now, before we get into the interview, Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what the Graveyard Shift is?
Well, it's I'm Dan Montgomery. I go by the Cremator on the show.
Oh, I like that. Wow.
It started back in 2006.
Oh, wow.
And I just kind of progressed into. It started. I was just playing off, like whatever I liked, like Pantera, Slayer, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I kind of tried to get like local Washington musicians in on this, right?
Oh, wow.
But I was getting more interest outside of the state than I was right here, which is kind of strange.
Yeah.
And so then I just kept doing that, and eventually I ended up on a station that all they did was unsigned bands.
Wow.
So for like 4 years, I was just dealing with like all the independent bands, all the ones that don't have a label and all that kind of stuff. And just this year, I kind of blew a gasket and went to another station, and now I'm playing what I want to play again.
So what station are you? Can people hear you on?
Right now, I'm on Monday nights. I'm on ISX Radio. That's still like an all underground type of show.
Cool.
And then Tuesdays through Friday, I'm over on Firebrand Radio.
Oh wow! I gotta tell people I've never heard your show, but I kind of dug what you had displayed on your Facebook page. Very nice page there, and I wanted to check it out. What we're interviewing you for today is our segment called On the Records, where we talk to people about bands and specifically albums that really had a huge influence on them. And I saw some great albums that you've kind of featured, I guess, on your show. And the one you decided you wanted to talk about today was Kiss's Rock and Roll Over, which is a great album to discuss. And you were sharing with me that was the very first album you ever purchased, and it really is one of their better studio albums. So let's get into it, Dan. Let's talk about, like, what do you remember from that very first album you bought, which was, as we said, Rock and Roll Over.
Yeah. Well, like when I bought it, I was there to get a different record, actually. And the guy behind the counter says, you're probably not going to like this. And he actually opened it up and put it on their turntable, and I was like, yeah, you're right. And then he reached over and he goes, this one just came in. Check this out. And he handed me Kiss Rock and Roll Over. He goes, have you ever heard of these guys? And I was like in 5th grade. Of course I'd never heard of these guys before.
Yeah. Let me ask you, so since you were such a young age, because a lot of people, the thing about Kiss is you're in for them both visually and musically, or like, especially at such a young age, they almost look like comic book heroes. Is that kind of, when you saw that album cover, that looks cool? Is that part of what really...
Yeah, that cover is really cool. It's an iconic cover, with that lightning bolt circle and all their four faces on there. Yeah. But there's there weren't any real pictures of them.
Yeah.
So you still didn't even really know what are these guys on the cover like? What do they do?
And as a 5-year-old kid, you're like, oh, what are these comic book heroes, or what is this? And then you put on a record, oh, okay, these guys must be in a band or something,
Yeah, and it was like what I was, listening to then. It was just whatever was on the radio, It was just like all pop music, like Neil Diamond and crap like that. And then when I got this, it was like, I popped it on, and the first time I heard I Want You, I was like, oh.
Yeah, and I was doing some...
completely blew me away.
I was doing some research for our interview today, Dan, and what's interesting is the album cover is become very iconic, as you said. I mean, even they use that for the they use that like as part of the floor stage for Kiss Unplugged, and then it was the artist that designed that cover. His name is Michael Dorad, who, interesting enough, he also designed the cover for Sonic Boom in 2009, and he also did a recent cover for a recent Anthrax live album where they were kind of paying homage to Rock and Roll Over with the same type of cover, but with the Anthrax band members. Kind of interesting. People don't know about it. Yeah. And now let's talk. Let's get into the music. So obviously, as a 5-year-old kid, the visuals on that album cover were a big part of why you even took that album home. I bet. But once you put that album, like you said, "I Want You." I mean, what a great rockin' tune. I mean, for it to kind of be introduced to Kiss through this album and that song, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was like the whole record is it's still really good, you know. But back then it was something completely different for me.
And you know what's interesting about
I hadn't been really introduced to like real rock and roll yet.
And you know what's interesting, Dan, about that being your introduction to Kiss? Of course, the album that preceded that was Destroyer, and that's the album. But it was an interesting time in the Kiss history, 1976. Of course, both albums came out, but Destroyer preceded Rock and Roll Over, of course, and that's the album that really kind of broke Kiss. After Kiss Alive, but I'm talking about for the studio albums. I mean, when people point to Kiss, a lot of people point to Kiss because that's another iconic album cover. I mean, all those songs, even 50 years later, still being played on the radio, but they're two totally different types of albums because, of course, Destroyer was Bob Ezrin producing, and then they went back to working with Eddie Kramer on this album. And a lot of people say either love or hate Destroyer because it was such a polished, commercial-sounding album, so drastically different from what Kiss was doing before, whereas Rock and Roll Over was a bunch of great like rock tunes, but it wasn't as polished as Destroyer.
Yeah. Well, like when they had Alive, right? You know, when they that was like their turning point, I think, when they changed their sound.
Yeah, because a lot of people I've heard over years talk about the fact that if you listen to those first 3 Kiss studios, they're a lot more of a raw sound than what Destroyer was, and then but for some reason people weren't buying those first 3 albums, but people were like, when they'd go see the band live, there's something going on with this band live, so they decided to record it, and everybody kind of, first time they heard that Kiss Alive album, people it just took off. People started going to all the shows, and buying all the albums. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how the progression was for me. I bought Rock and Roll Over.
Yeah.
And then about that time, this guy says, "Hey, I went back into that record store like the next day, looking for some more."
Yeah. Wow.
And he goes, "Well, here, I got these right here." And he had the first 3 albums there.
Oh, that must have been like a.
And he also had the. I don't know if you remember, they had a box set that was just called Originals.
Oh yeah.
And it was just loaded down with propaganda, right?
Yeah. I mean,
and I was trying to get my hands on that, but I couldn't afford it.
Yeah, what a treasure load of stuff! Like within just a matter of days, you're exposed to Kiss through all these great albums. I mean,
it was all by chance, it was by this freaking record store guy.
Yeah. And what did you think about when you saw the Kiss Alive album? I mean, we're going back to probably days when vinyl was still king and was everywhere to be purchased, but I remember picking up that Alive album and seeing that double gatefold. I mean, that was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Wow, what is this,
Yeah, that was it was, back then, albums were like an experience.
Oh yeah, I mean, back in that time.
You could sit there and listen to the album and stare at the cover and look at the crowd, look at the pictures that were in the album, and just go, wow, that'd be really cool to actually see this.
I mean, I gotta tell you, Dan. That's taking me back to when, I used to go purchase a lot of stuff at Tower Records. I'm from the Los Angeles area here, and they used to have listening stations in there where you could go check out all the latest releases, and they had just great displays. A lot of kids don't even know what that experience like. What's a record, let alone a record store,
Right.
Yeah. But I gotta tell you, Dan, you got that great. You got that great radio voice. And what did you say your nickname was again? Because the Creeper or something like that?
It was a Cremator.
Cremator. I love that, man. How did you come up with that, or did somebody give it to you?
That was the name of our first band.
Oh wow. Oh, so
we practiced in the basement of a morgue.
Oh wow, how cool is that? So
and the guy who ran it, he would come down every once in a while and say, "Yeah, I really like your music.
So
what's the name of your band?"
So
and we asked him what his name was. And it was going to end up being something really weird. It's like, we can't really call the band that. That's just weird. And so then, so we just call it Cremator.
So I'm imagining, just based on that name alone, that the band was at least a little like Kiss as far as you guys had a theatrical visual thing going as well.
We were more, then at that point we were more really heavy rock metal. Not really thrashy yet, but
getting there.
But definitely heavier than what you would hear on the radio.
And so I got to ask you, like, were you what did you play? Were you a singer, a guitar player?
I was a bass.
Oh, bass. Okay, so is it safe to assume that Gene Simmons was your favorite member of Kiss?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And then Ace Frehley, and then I dug Peter Criss a lot too. He had just a really rockin', cool voice for rock and roll.
You know, it's interesting because, as I'm sure you know, like a lot of Kiss fans, Peter Criss, oddly enough, started out as more of a jazz drummer, and he learned a little more how to play rock-oriented music after joining Kiss, but he's really a jazz drummer. And I was reading that in regards to Rock and Roll Over, he was having a lot of trouble, I guess, whatever studio they were using, getting the right drum sound. So he actually set
in a bathroom.
Yeah, in a bathroom, was talking to other guys like through a video system. But I mean, I think that Rock and Roll Over, oddly enough, may be one of those albums where he's got a better drum sound. But I often thought Peter was a better singer than a drummer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he's underrated as a drummer.
Yeah.
They kind of look over. They just, when people are talking about drummers, no one ever says, "Oh, Peter Criss kicked ass."
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, but he
was perfect for that band.
I think on a lot of earlier albums, a lot of his playing is better because I do think his drug addiction had a lot to do with his maybe his drum playing not progressing. I mean, but the guy did a lot of injuries. Says I think part of the reason he's retired now is he suffers from carpal tunnel, which is from years of like playing the drums.
Right.
But if you go back and you listen to like for example, 100,000 Years, either off of the first album or especially on Kiss Alive 1, you listen to that drum solo, man, what a powerhouse drummer he was back in the day.
Yeah, it's really good. I played that album a couple of weeks ago, actually.
Yeah.
And I was comparing 100,000 Years to Moby Dick.
Yeah, and another song I always dug with like off of Hotter Than Hell was which oddly enough Ace Frehley wrote, and he let Peter sing because I guess back then Ace didn't think he was a decent enough of a lead singer, so he'd usually give his songs to either Gene or Peter. But Strange Ways, what a cool song too that was.
Yeah, Strange Ways is a cool tune.
Yeah.
I actually got to see Ace Frehley when he was doing Frehley's Comet.
Oh wow.
Me and my friend were in the bathroom getting ready for the show, and some dude comes out of the stall, and we're standing there talking about Ace Frehley and Kiss. And we'd never seen the guy before.
Yeah.
We didn't know who he was or nothing like that.
Yeah.
And we're standing around like smoking a doobie, and we're passing it around. He goes, "Well, I got to take off, guys. See you later."
Yeah, wow.
And he takes off, and we had mentioned to him what sucked is how Kiss is like trademarking his stuff and would let him perform it.
Wow.
And so, and we had heard that one of the things they wouldn't let him do was catch his guitar on fire during his solo.
Wow.
That was a Kiss act and not an Ace Frehley gig. And that's what he said in the bathroom too. He says, "Yeah, that's a bunch of shit." And so he takes off, right?
Yeah.
And when the show gets ready to start, so we go back out there, we push our way up to the front of the stage, and we're on the wrong side of the stage to get like a full view of Ace Frehley through the whole show.
Yeah.
And he saw where we're at, and he comes over and he's just kind of not standing in the center of the stage, but he's standing over on our side of the stage.
Yeah.
Kind of like he's trying to make sure that who we were. And so then he comes up, he says, "I'm going to do Shock Me for my friends right here in the front row." And he points at us, and I'm like, "Holy shit, that's the dude that we were smoking with in the bathroom."
In regards to Ace Frehley, I got to ask, he recently released a new single. It's off of his upcoming album, which is Origins 2. What did you think of Space Truckin'?
Oh, it's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, it seems like, even though it's a Deep Purple cover, it seems like a very fitting Ace Frehley song for him to cover,
Yeah, for sure.
And, and it's interesting you bring up the topic about the makeup, which oddly enough, somehow he retained his rights back to the makeup, because I don't know if you remember back in '94 when they put out that Kiss tribute album to themselves, "Kiss My Ass." They had to alter the Ace makeup on the cover because he wouldn't allow them to use his makeup design.
Right.
Yeah, so kind of cool that he got that
There was
back.
a lot of sneaky stuff going on in the background there. You know, you had what was his name? The guy who would fill in or actually take his place,
Then
Tommy Thayer or somebody like that.
Yeah. Now let me get your opinion on that. What do you think about like Tommy and Eric wearing the Ace and Peter makeup?
You know, I can understand why they did it.
Yeah.
You know, because nobody wanted to see the band change.
Yeah.
Right? But if you looked at them, you could tell it wasn't the same people.
Yeah, it's very... Now, I'll tell you why I don't have such a problem with it. I think I'd have a bigger problem with it if they were going out there trying to, mislead people to think that was Ace and Peter. Then I'd have a problem with that. But like you said, you can easily look and you can tell that's Tommy. And, Tommy Thayer, it looks nothing like Ace Frehley, even body-wise. So you can tell. And it's interesting when we get on this topic because it's very weird for a band to kind of be in that situation where these characters they design, the makeup characters, the superhero alter egos, they are almost more iconic than the guys playing them.
Absolutely.
And that's a very unique kind of. And I think really Kiss is the first one to kind of. I mean, very very first kind of shock rocker I'd say is Alice Cooper, but I remember Paul Stanley years ago talking about the fact that we all went to see Alice Cooper, but the thing we noted was there was only one guy in the band made up. We were going to take it to the extreme. We were going to take it to the next level. There was going to be 4 guys in the band that were all made up, And then even Marilyn Manson kind of took it beyond what Kiss did because Marilyn Manson kind of seen what Kiss did, and he was very smart business-wise. Like since it was his band, he was. Each different member would be allowed to kind of create their own character, but since it was his band, his name, he was going to own all the rights to all those characters. Yeah, but it's very unique. Now, getting back to rock and roll over, you mentioned the song "I Want You." Now, I think that's a great, that's a perfect Paul Stanley tune. And another tune I always love that's on there is the Gene Simmons song "See You in Your Dreams," which is interesting. That's the very first time we heard that song, but then of course it would later, a few years later, appear on Gene's solo album. Yeah, and then
it's definitely a cool album.
Yeah,
it's. I think another one I like on there is the one that one of them that Peter Criss sings is "Baby Driver."
Oh yeah, that's kind of. I mean, that's
a rockin' tune.
Yeah, it's a
rockin' some stupid lyrics,
Yeah.
But it's a rockin' tune.
And I think it's a Peter tune, and it's kind of one of those songs when you play the album for the first time, you really didn't. I didn't see that one coming, but okay, that's a cool song. And I think
that's what I read about that is it was a rewrite from his first band or one of his other bands that he was in.
Yeah, I think it's pre-Kiss band. I think it was called. It was either I think Lips or Chelsea, but there was this guy all throughout Kiss too. In his solo career, but that's no longer with us. He's passed on. But a guy named Stan Pendridge that he used to write songs with, and that was one of their early tunes. And then you got, of course, "Hard Luck Woman," which I don't know if you know. Paul Stanley thought it sounded too much like a Rod Stewart song, so he was originally going to give it to Rod Stewart to sing because he thought it sounded a lot like Maggie May.
But I was reading about that.
But it was actually Gene who insisted, no, we should record that song, and you should give it to Peter to sing. And then part of the reason for that is because they just had the big success on the album before with Beth, and so they thought, oh, that'd be a cool follow-up to Beth,
Right.
And it's kind of an interesting song too because it almost has kind of a country rock swing feel to it, and so it's really different kind of tune. But it was a big hit for the band, and it was all over radio. And I remember like back in '95 when they did that Kiss convention tour, they performed it on there, and of course Peter was no longer in the band, but Paul did the lead vocal. He was like, "Hey, I know y'all think this is a Peter Criss tune, but I wrote the song, so I'm performing this." And I kind of wish they would do a new version because Paul does a pretty decent job of doing it, you know.
Yeah. Have you heard that cover that Ace and Paul did of the free song?
Yeah, it's called I think Fire and Night,
something like that.
Fire and Water, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
very cool.
Yeah, very cool.
They
They
did an
even
awesome job on that.
I don't know if you had a chance to see, but you can go on YouTube. They even did they did a video for that, and it's pretty cool at the Whiskey in LA.
At the beginning, and go, hey, what's up?
Hey, yeah.
That's cool.
And then another song I love off this album, and I felt should have been a bigger hit, really underrated, was the song "Mr. Speed."
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and
that's cool too.
And the Gene songs on here too are pretty cool, like "Ladies' Room" and "Love 'Em and Leave 'Em."
Yeah. And don't forget Dr. Love.
Oh yeah, that's his iconic, like. Well, when you think of Gene Simmons, I like a lot of Gene stuff like you, but when you think of a Gene Simmons songs, his two, I think, most iconic, oddly enough, are Dr. Love and The God of Thunder, just because he refers to himself as Dr. Love or, The God of Thunder. And interesting about God of Thunder, you may know, is, may or may not know, well, that's thought of as a Gene Simmons tune. It was actually Paul Stanley that wrote the tune. And if you got the Kiss box set, there's a demo of God of Thunder with Paul doing the lead vocal, which you can find on the internet as well. But it's kind of just a different take. But it's interesting that Bob Ezrin thought, no, Paul, we're gonna let Gene do that because that sounds more like a Gene song, and it's interesting because that kind of became his persona for a while.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And but just top to bottom, I'd say this is really a great album. And the thing is, a lot of these songs are still in the set list, 50 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I don't think they've done a show that didn't have like Calling Dr. Love.
Oh yeah.
Take Me on there,
I mean, even in the 80s, they featured like Dr. Love, Ladies' Room, and one of the songs like I love it. They've been playing a little more over the last few years is from the very first Kiss album was Nothing to Lose. I mean, that has like a real Chuck Berry feel to it. I especially love the piano in that,
Yeah. They had some rockin' tunes.
Yeah.
I kind of fell off of being a big Kiss fan when I got what was that, Music from the Elder or something like that?
Oh yeah, that's interesting because that was just one album from 1981, and it's hard to believe next year is gonna be like the 40th anniversary of that. But part of a reason that album sounded the way it did was the producer Bob Ezrin, as great of a producer, he was, I guess, really heavily addicted to drugs at the time, and that had a lot to do with the way the album came out. And I heard originally they were going to do because it's based on some concept they came up with, having heroes and stuff, and they were actually going to make a movie, but they decided not to. The album got such poor response, of course, as you may know, that they didn't. That's like the one album they didn't even tour behind. So they just got to work on the next album because they got such a bad response. But I'll tell you a funny story about the Elder. For several years in the U.S., just because it wasn't no demand for it, it remained out of print. And like I had every Kiss album. I was a real diehard, and I thought, man, I got to find a way to get my hands on that album. Of course, this is way before YouTube ever existed or anything. And I'll tell you, when I finally got my hands on it, when they reissued it, I thought, I was dying to have this. It's not as great as I thought it'd be, but it's not a bad album either. It's just kind of really not a Kiss album, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But when you have one album that's kind of a flop out of, and you're around for 50 years, that's not too bad of a record. And I'll tell you, a lot of people try to say, Kiss are not the greatest musicians, but I'll tell you what's made them last for 50 years. Gene and Paul, to me, they're just, what they really are is they've got a real gift for songwriting. Because, you put on, Dr. Love, Ladies' Room, Rock and Roll All Night, even Lick It Up. These are great written tunes. They stick in your head. And they've been played on the radio, some of them for over 50 years, so Kiss has got that sound, Oddly enough, they're one of those bands that, for a lot of people, are very much the soundtrack to their life. Yeah. So would you say would you say, Dan, this is one of your favorite Kiss albums or one of your favorite albums of all time?
It's definitely one of my favorite Kiss albums. Mm-hmm. And I guess if I was going to rank it among all my favorite albums, it's probably in my top 10.
Oh, that's amazing. And
I mean, because there's a lot of cool albums, and I'll be going, oh, well, this one's better than that one, but this one's better than that one, but this one will always be there because it was the one that set me down the road.
Yeah, that's great. And a lot of people, they slag Kiss for the makeup, but I've heard them, of course, talk about back in the day. People were telling them, you guys really got something great going musically, but you really have to wear that makeup. And it's funny because the makeup is what put them over the top. The makeup is the thing they were, really became known for. And then I remember, you had people in 1983 when they decided, oh, we're gonna take off the makeup. It's time to do that. Oh man, they're going down. Nobody's gonna want Kiss without makeup. But somehow they were able to remain successful. And then eventually they decided, you know what, we're gonna put the makeup on, and they became even bigger, than they were without the makeup. So it's kind of one of those interesting rock and roll tales to tell. So, So let me ask you, Dan. Getting back to your show, The Graveyard Shift, you're telling us a little bit about. So I see like you profile a lot of these albums, kind of what we're doing here. So how do you go about like I seen the other night you were doing Judas Priest, Sad Wings of Destiny. How did you pick that? Is that because that's like an album means a lot to you, or you get people wanting to talk about it?
While I'm doing the show, sometimes if I remember, I will present the question to people in the chat room.
Oh, okay.
What do you guys want to hear tomorrow?
And so,
and one of the guys suggested "Sad Wings of Destiny," and I'm like, "That's an awesome Judas Priest album."
Yeah. So now, when you did that, of course, I didn't get a chance to hear, but like, were you playing just like the whole album? Were you just talking about the album?
Play the whole album.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'll play I don't know. So it's a 3-hour show, so it'll start off at 6 o'clock, and then at 7 o'clock, that's when the album starts. Oh. And so every night I'll feature a different album.
Yeah, it's interesting because Sad Wings is one of those like great Priest albums I think a lot of people have forgotten about. And I say that because you'll hear diehard Priest fans talk about it, but a lot more people, when they mention Judas Priest, they might right away go to someone like Screaming for Vengeance or even British Steel. But that's one of those lost, forgotten gems. Now the Priest.
I think this was their first album where they got their sound together.
Yeah.
What Judas Priest is going to sound like.
Yeah, because even on the first album, they were kind of
I mean, Rock-A-Rolla was a really cool album, but it had different tastes. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And interesting thing about Priest, I realize like because they're from Britain, so when they were just coming up, their big dream was to make it here in United States of America, and to come over here, and they're just as big as now as they are, back home in Britain,
Absolutely. And they are definitely an awesome, just an awesome band. I think I saw them doing British Steel and Screaming for Vengeance tours.
Yeah, and how could you not? I just don't understand. They've been up both of them at times, but how they've never gotten into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is beyond me.
Yeah, that's just it's a travesty compared to some of the people they've put in there.
And a perfect example of that is like the last two years they've done it. Like, and taking nothing away from T-Rex because they were a great band, but when you got on the ballot, like T-Rex, who maybe I can name one or two songs, versus a band like Judas Priest, I don't know how T-Rex gets nominated, not only nominated, but actually gets into Rock and Roll Hall of Fame versus Judas Priest. You know what I mean? I guess, it's weird the way they run that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because you take like a band like Cheap Trick, they had a falling out with their drummer Bunny Carlos, but when Cheap Trick got inducted in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they allowed him to be part of a ceremony. They got up on stage and played with them. And then you got other bands like Metallica, where they allow kind of every guy that's ever been in the band, he gets to take part of it. And then you get a band like Kiss, we were talking about earlier, who the Hall of Fame only says, we're only going to allow the 4 original members. we don't care about Eric Carr, Bruce Kulick, or Vinnie Vincent. Even though they're in Kiss and they're in their and they wrote songs now, we're not going to include them. I mean, it's funny how they do things,
Yeah, it's kind of I don't know, it's messed up.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then and sometimes in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's interesting because I seen like when the Grateful Dead got in, they included people that weren't even members of a band but were maybe contributing songwriters. I'm like, okay, what?
They rode along on the bus.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very unique. And another album I want to talk to that I seen you feature on your show. One album I always loved was that debut Boston album.
Oh yeah, that was another cool album.
Yeah, and Boston is very unique because I mean they sold a lot of records, but like they took between like about 8 years between albums, and it's like they kind of have faded away. So I doubt we're going to see any new music from them. But what a great band they had,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
especially those.
And then like Tom Schultz, he's like inventing stuff to make sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it was very cool.
So Dan, we're kind of been all over the place today, but just getting to the point of this today is getting to know you. So you mentioned you were in a band, so I was kind of in that you're a bass player. But if people wanted to check out the music you made, is there a place they can do that? Is there a CD they can?
Nah, there's no printed material.
Oh wow!
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It was all pre-CD digital days. I think the last time we actually played together was in '94.
Have you ever had the itching to get back to doing it, or do you enjoy what you're doing now?
Well, I kind of went back and forth with it. I jammed out with a couple of guys, but they didn't seem like they were serious.
Yeah.
And then I just got into some money problems,
Yeah,
sell all your music stuff. And
that plays a role.
Then just a couple of years ago, I bought a PVT 40 fretless.
Oh wow.
Which is, it wasn't a rare bass, but it could pretty much copy any sound from anything that was made.
Yeah, wow.
Because it has different capacitors, and it was just a really tricked out bass. And then I don't know, I started on it a couple of years ago, but now I'm starting to actually try to build a bass.
Oh wow.
It started off as I think they told me it was a 1967 Tesco, and it was pretty much it was pretty damaged when I got it. So I'm at the point now where I'm trying to sand down the clear coat and get it all ready to put together.
And let me ask you, Dan. Like, so once you made that transition from being being a musician to being on the radio, you told me in the early days you were like playing a lot of these unsigned bands, and bands are trying to get signed. What was that like going from playing in a band to trying to help other musicians get their music heard?
That was kind of one of the forces behind putting this show together. Is when we were in a band, the only way you could get your music out was to have a cassette tape and $20 or $50 and hand it to a guy who works at a radio station.
Yeah.
And in one case, we saw a DJ that was fairly popular in Seattle at the time, and we handed him a cassette with $20, and he looked at us, and this is right in the height of the grunge movement, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So we weren't wearing blown out jeans.
Wow. Oh,
right?
that's yeah.
We weren't wearing flannel shirts.
Yeah.
And he just looks at us and says, "Metal, huh?"
Yeah.
And my drummer looks at him and gives him the devil horns and goes, "Yeah." And so then about that time he turns around, and then our friends in another band are walking out of this other bar.
Yeah.
And they had just seen us give the guy, the cassette. And they watched the guy put the money in his pocket and throw the cassette out into the street.
Yeah.
So they jumped on the DJ and beat him up.
Wow.
And, we got our $20 back.
Yeah.
But then we couldn't get another gig because we were known as the band who beat up the DJ.
Oh wow.
even though we didn't beat up the DJ.
So let me ask you, Dan, you ever live dangerously, like when a band would hand you a tape or something and like just play on your show without even listening to it first?
I did for a while.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
and then I got to the point where it's like, I gotta listen to this stuff for at least 20 seconds.
Yeah, I got a reputation here.
So I put up with this like a measuring stick.
Oh wow.
Bring it 20 seconds to impress me.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay. That's a good thing.
Because if it's any longer than that, this means it's going to take too long for the song to develop before people are going to be interested in it. And if it's too soon, well, that's still okay.
Yeah.
It just depends on how it goes out.
Yeah.
So I'll listen to a song, and like I'll get, I probably have, I don't know, probably 40 emails right now that I have to go through and listen to.
And once you do that, once you've listened to it, do you email them back? Like do you email everybody back, give them some kind of response, or is?
Well, most of the time, it's not coming from the bands directly, so they don't even know that I have their music.
Okay.
And that was one of the things that was getting kind of upsetting to me, is I was spending this time
trying to help
going through all these songs, all this music, and playing the ones that I thought were worthy, right?
Yeah.
But then I'm going to say 5% of the bands actually cared that I was playing their music.
Oh wow! Well, what a disappointment that would be. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I had one show where I called it, basically I put a post up of like a GIF file of a guillotine falling down, right?
Yeah.
And I listed all of these bands that had never been played on my show before. And I said, you got two ways to stay alive. You can show up in the chat room and state your case, or maybe the people listening to your music will like your band.
Oh, okay. Wow.
If neither one of those things happen, you'll never be on the show again.
Okay. Well, hey, I want to say, Dan.
None of them showed up. Not one of them showed up.
I want to thank you, Dan, for taking time to talk to me. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you. But before we wrap this up, final question for you. Okay. I don't know if you've heard of this band called Red Voodoo. They're kind of a modern day Van Halen. They're just kind of working on getting their first EP. They got a music video up. You can see on YouTube, or if you go to my Facebook page, I posted. It's called Rise Up, and that's one band you might want to check out. But the bands you've been hearing, like some of the newer bands, is there one that kind of stands out to you? Because I'll tell you, the last band that really stood out to me was maybe the Dead Daisies.
Yeah, they are pretty awesome. One of them that really caught my imagination was a band called White Collar Sideshow.
Oh wow!
They have it's just a husband and wife, but they have this like Rob Zombie, White Zombie vibe to them.
Oh, cool!
It's there's like background noises and different sound files going on. It's just a really, really cool deal. Probably 3 or 4 months ago, they did like a COVID-19 live concert on Facebook.
Yeah. Wow.
And I got this what is it? Reverb Nation, I think it's called.
Yeah.
So I shared that entire concert on the video section. So if anybody wanted to check it out, they could go over there and check that out.
Yeah.
But they're a cool band. There's a bunch of really cool bands. There's a group out of Texas. It's Father and Sons.
Wow.
And the name of the band is Bad Analogy.
Oh wow.
They're very cool. Uncle Sid out of Canada is pretty awesome.
Oh, cool. We'll have to check these bands out and reach out to them maybe. But anyways, Dan, thanks again for doing this, and this interview will probably be going the next week or two. I'll let you know. Now, before we do go, like I told people, I found you on Facebook. You have a Facebook page for the Graveyard Shift. Now, do you have any other websites you want to kind of plug before we go?
Well, I got my own. It's a Van Zugel website. It's the Graveyard Shift radio show .vanzugel.com, and that just pretty much got everything that's going on with the show. There's the Reverb Nation page. It's got all of the not all of it. It's just got just like kind of a cross section of what I play, what I like.
Okay.
Some videos up there of there's a Bad Analogy archaeology video up there. There's a couple of White Collar Sideshow videos, a whole bunch of other stuff to check out.
Thanks for that, Dan.
Yeah,
and
you're welcome.
Let me just say, Dan, I don't know if you've done this before, but you gave a really great interview. It was great talking to you. We'll have to do it again, so let's stay in touch, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jason. Have a good one.